Conan, I wanted to ask you a question.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear what you've been learning. You wrote me a wonderful email and really laid out a lot of things you've been thinking about. So I'd love for you to tell the class about some of the work you've been doing.
Well, I got stoned. I didn't write the paper. Then I wrote something, but my dog ate it. And yeah, no. We talked a little bit about it, but one of the things is I love to read. So the first thing that I did, and I didn't want it to feel like I'm doing a good job and doing my assignment. I really wanted it to feel like I want to do this for me. You know, I want to. So one of the first things I read, and I was ashamed that I hadn't read it before because it's a book that's been around my whole life, is the autobiography of Malcolm X. And it is one of the most harrowing stories, personal stories, that you're ever going to read. And it takes place in Roxbury, which is right near where I grew up. And obviously, Malcolm X is growing up in the 1940s and 50s in Roxbury, and then moving to Harlem. But that transformation is absolutely incredible. And you can't read that book and not see that this person, I think his father dies violently at the hands of racists, and his whole life is all about the color of his skin. And he's obviously incredibly intelligent and incredibly talented and incredibly good looking and charismatic. And you see how his entire life is changed by institutional racism. And you completely understand his point of view by the time you get to 1960, 61, and he's 62, and he's saying, look, I respect Dr. Martin Luther King and peaceful protests and everything, but you understand how we got to any means necessary. You completely understand it. So there's things as simple as reading a book. There's also tons of conversations you can be having. And there are ways that you can think about, how can I take my little world and make changes in it that will, for me and for the people around me, advance this movement a little bit. And so the question is, and we've had a lot of talks about it with my producer and with people on the show, just talking about, what can we do? What can we do in the makeup of our show? What can we do in and talking not just with the show, but my wife and my kids, what can we be doing day in and day out? And one of the nice things is, if my kids are any example, one is 16, my daughter's 16, and my son's 14, they're absolutely, it's a generation, and their friends as well. They're very, very interested in making this world better and racially fairer than it has been. They're very, it's not the top of their list. And so that's inspiring. That's hopeful.
Now, I did send your family shirts that match the one I'm wearing.
Yep.
Did the kids get the Black Lives Matter care package?
This, they did. And I got your Black Lives Matter shirt as well.
There you go, Conan.
And this leads me to my next question, which is, I don't have a confusion about this. I want to make that clear. But there has been a common refrain among certain people in this country.
I think I know where you're going with this one.
That say Black Lives Matter. Well, all lives matter. And I have a point of view about that, very strong point of view about that. But why don't you tell us what you see the distinction being?
That's just not something that I debate,
Right.
That's just not a debate. And, I think the way that I do touch on that here in this book I wrote.
Oh, look, you have your own book with you right there.
It's a super coincidence. I didn't even realize it was right here. What? This is so lucky. I'm so relieved. And actually in this book, again, which is an A to Z book of radical moments and movements from American history, many of which we don't learn about in schools, B is for Black Lives Matter. And it's about the three women who founded the movement. And I actually address that. So I'm just going to read my paragraph about that.
All right.
Where I say, some non-Black people feel threatened or left out by the phrase Black Lives Matter. What about us, they've argued? Why single out Black lives? Don't all lives matter? The answer is yes. Of course, every human life matters. But until all humans are actually treated equally in this country, it is justified and vital to bring attention to certain groups who've been routinely, statistically, and historically harmed. That is my succinct, kind of succinct explanation. In other words,
well, it's very good. I just was having a sense memory. No one's read to me since I was about 5, and it was fantastic. And
eyes glazed over. You started to nap.
No. No, they didn't glaze over, but much better content than the stuff they were reading me when I was 5.
Oh, we could do this. I could Zoom with you at night and read all these stories.
What if my wife's going to walk in and go, "Who's that woman you're talking to at 3 o'clock in the morning?" And I'll be like, "No, we're talking about race." And she'll say, "Yeah, okay, I want a divorce."
Well, I will say one thing I found in writing these books, because the books that I write with my collaborator, Miriam Kleinstahl, they're aimed at young readers, but I do a lot of school visits. Well, in the before times, I would go into classrooms a lot. And I always love to read to young people, but I love reading to high school students and college students, and I'll read to adults. We all really like to be read to. So yeah, that's my answer.
I had the same feeling, which is, immediately, which is the reason the statement Black Lives Matter comes out of this incredible undeniable history of neglect. That's why the statement needs to be made. Yeah. In the first, so then to say, well, wait a minute, no, all lives matter, is to deny that we have an issue. we have a specific racial issue in this country.
Yeah, and at this point, also, at this point in the conversation, in the movement, in our country, at this point, to say all lives matter, that is an expressly violent and racist statement at this point. We're beyond context. In fact, here where I live in Alameda, California, right next to Oakland. Several Black families in town recently woke up to find their cars vandalized. Their tires had been slashed, they'd been keyed, and All Lives Matter and ALM had been spray painted all over the cars. This is in the liberal Bay Area. So we're beyond the conversation of debating whether the phrases.
Yeah.
And Black Lives Matter, and again, I talk about it in the book, that phrase began with conversations amongst 3 Black women who were friends, who were feeling unbelievable rage and sorrow when George Zimmerman was acquitted of the murder of Trayvon Martin. And they literally just typed on Facebook, "I feel like Black lives don't matter." And then they turned that in and said, "You know what? Black lives do matter. Black Lives Matter." And they started that as a hashtag initially to share love and to uplift their community. And then as it caught on, they were like, wow, this maybe is a movement. And then they've built it into a global movement. And those women are Alicia Garza, Opal Tometi, and Patrisse Cullors. And they have been propelling this, and it's an important phrase. We put it on the cover of the book too. And I do, one of the things when I first started doing these Instagram lives after I received my promotion to being in charge of your whiteness.
Trust me, it's a demotion.
Well, I wasn't working a lot because of quarantine, so I had some time.
You take the jobs that come your way.
Basically. Yeah. So, but one of the first things I talked to people about was, if you're wondering what to do right now, as you're grappling with what can I do, what do I read, which book, get a piece of paper, write Black Lives Matter on it, and tape it up in your window. And if you can't take that step, if you're a white person and you're not ready to do that, to make your support visible, then there's a lot more kind of deep work that you have to do. And that could maybe show you what you need to do. But if you could do that, it does have an impact. I've been hearing a lot of really powerful stories of how that show of solidarity and support has had so much meaning to so many people.